Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Wisdom in the Best Books and Films, where we find bite-sized nuggets of truth and use them to be better people. This week I am going to be quoting from a novel from the early 1900s, I want to say the 1930s, by Daphne du Maurier. The book is Rebecca. It is kind of an eerie ghost story / romance novel that is set in the early 1900s in Europe. I try not to do too big of spoilers, but if you haven't read the novel, I do kind of, I guess you would say, hint at what happens for certain things in the book. So if you don't want to have spoilers, I would recommend you go read the book first. It's hard to talk about some things without giving away something. But I will say that I am careful to mostly be vague about what is happening and how it relates to things. I do use a direct quote that requires a little bit of context, so I give it there. If you enjoy the podcast as usual, please leave a review and share it with friends. Here is week 3 of our Halloween special, Just One Step Forward. You know, I can't help but wonder sometimes if we all just want to make mountains out of molehills. For some reason, it is really easy to assume we can read other people's minds, and we take something they said or didn't say, and we turn it into some sort of insult or comment on our inadequacy. I think of it as a strength of mine that I am difficult to offend, likely because I know how often the things that I say are taken as offensive to others. It makes it easier for me to offer grace and assume there was no insult intended. But even I will sometimes take comments or actions as indications that I have been weighed and measured and found wanting. Ghost stories are often great examples of this sort of poor communication. The protagonist sees some things in a dark corridor, or notices that someone moved something, or finds a room on fire. Then instead of asking someone about the odd thing, they assume a ghost is out to get them, or their spouse is out to get them, or any of a million things that are clearly pretty low on the Occam's razor scale, but they want to believe them, so they do. A great example of this is the novel Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. It is a romantic ghost story set in the early 1900s. In the story, the unnamed main character makes many assumptions about why she is not as good as her husband's previous wife, Rebecca. She spends the majority of the book reading too much into little comments or looks of people in her home, letting it drive a wedge between herself and her husband for a time. It doesn't help that the ghost of Rebecca seems determined to show the world her deficiencies. I will try not to spoil the novel and the eerie plot, but she realizes at one point that she only ever needed to clarify things with her husband. Quote, "It seemed incredible to me now that I had never understood. I wondered how many people there were in the world who suffered and continued to suffer, because they could not break out from their own web of shyness and reserve, and in their blindness and folly built up a great distorted wall in front of them that hid the truth. This was what I had done. I had built up false pictures in my mind and sat before them. I had never had the courage to demand the truth. Had I made one step forward out of my own shyness, Maxim would have told me these things 4 months, 5 months ago." End quote. So Mrs. Maxim de Winter spends much of the book worried that her husband doesn't love her, and in so doing creates problems from nothing, more than her own shyness and inability to just ask him about some of the things he and others have said and done. Their explanations, the minute she asks, help her to see that she has spent months stressed and worried over all the wrong things. What's worse, as in real life when we make similar mistakes, her worry and stress could have been better spent trying to solve actual problems that were happening in the background. If you have received some indication from a loved one that you aren't living up to their expectations, or any other comment or action hurts your feelings, maybe you should try taking that one step forward out of your uncertainty and shyness. Maybe all they need is to understand what you think to offer some clarification of their own thoughts. Maybe they really were being a big jerk. Or maybe they are just clumsy and thoughtless and need a kick in the pants. Whatever the case may be, you cannot fix it by hiding from it. And very often, confronting it head on will help you to realize it is mainly only occurring in your imagination. You have built a wall to the truth, and you need to have the courage to demand the truth. Take one step forward, then follow it up with another, and many of your life's problems will just melt away, leaving you with the energy and focus to deal with the ones that are not imagined, instead of fighting the ghosts of those that are. Did you enjoy this week's episode of Wisdom in the Best Books and Films? If so, I would ask you to please go and share with anyone that you can think of who may benefit from these topics. Discuss it at work, with friends, at church, anywhere where the opportunity feels natural and the topics would be helpful to others. I personally am not a huge self-promoter, and so the only way that this podcast will get to reach very many people at all is through the listeners. Please also share with me if anything that you've heard has been impactful in your life, or share with me any ideas that you may have of wisdom that you've gleaned from different books or films. Be happy to hear from you anytime, and I will respond to all emails. You can find information for how to contact me in the show notes. Hope to hear from you soon.